And welcome to the deep dive, everyone. I am thrilled you're joining us today because the source material you send over is it's an absolute treasure map.
It really is.
You've provided us with this visually stunning, meticulously crafted set of master study notes, and they cover the entire plant kingdom.
Yeah, it's a remarkable study guide you've put together here. Right off the bat, there's a big sticky note you've placed at the front that says, exam prep edition, focus on the evolutionary journey.
Which is a great hook.
Exactly. And right next to that, you've drawn a very clear, emphatic picture of a mushroom with a massive red X through it. And you wrote, fungi excluded.
Making the rules very clear from page 1.
Yep. So we have our parameters. We are looking purely at the chronological, sequential journey of how plants conquer the Earth. We were going from microscopic aquatic life all the way up to towering, complex, flowering trees.
Exactly, because this isn't just a dry list of vocabulary words to memorize. It is this dynamic story of planetary conquest and evolutionary upgrades.
The literal step-by-step evolution.
Right, and we're going to follow that story exactly how you've laid it out, generating this audio page by page in a sequential manner, straight through your notes.
I love that approach.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the biggest question on page 2. How do we even make sense of the giant green blur that is the plant kingdom?
It's a lot of plants.
Right. You start your guide with a section on classification, showing how humans have struggled to organize all these plants over centuries. And it kicks off with the artificial system, the one championed by Linnaeus.
Right, Linnaeus. And he based his artificial system purely on superficial morphology.
So just how things look.
Exactly. He was looking at the plant's habit, its color, the number and shape of its leaves. Which, I mean, it makes sense intuitively, right?
Sure, if you're trying to organize the world, you group things that look alike together.
It's like organizing a library by the color of the book covers.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
But your notes highlight a fatal flaw with this system.
Yeah.
It ended up separating closely related species just because they didn't look identical on the outside.
Right.
And it gave equal weight to vegetative and sexual characteristics, which we now know is a mistake because vegetative traits like leaf size or shape, they change so easily depending on the environment.
Wait, so if two plants look completely different because, say, one is growing in a desert and one is in a swamp...
Linnaeus would say they aren't related.
Even if they actually are?
Precisely. Which is why your guide moves us down the page to the natural system, the one developed by Bentham and Hooker.
Which you've labeled in big letters as better.
Much better. They started looking at natural affinities, going deeper than just the surface.
Okay.
They looked at internal anatomy, embryology, and phytochemistry. They were trying to organize the library by the actual content of the books, not just the covers.
That makes a lot more sense. But even that wasn't the final answer, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't. You bring us right after that to the current system, the phylogenetic system.
And what makes the phylogenetic system the gold standard?
What's fascinating here is that the phylogenetic system is based entirely on evolutionary relationships and common ancestors.
Okay.
It assumes that organisms belonging to the same taxa actually have a common ancestor. This was a massive paradigm shift in taxonomy.
Because it's no longer just about what looks similar.
Exactly. It's about what is actually genetically and evolutionarily related.
Yeah.
It counts for convergent evolution, where two completely unrelated plants might evolve similar features just because they live in similar environments.
Like a cactus and a euphorbia looking the same because they both live in the desert.
Exactly that.
And to figure out those deep family trees, modern taxonomists have some incredibly cool tools, which you've illustrated beautifully at the bottom of page 2.
The modern tools are vital.
Yeah, first there's numerical taxonomy, where they use computers and codes. You drew this neat little grid with plus and minus signs, explaining that every single observable character is assigned a number and a code.
Right, and the computer processes hundreds of traits at the exact same time, giving them all equal weight.
Then there is cytotaxonomy, which relies on cytological information.
Literally looking inside the cell.
Yeah, looking at chromosome number, structure, and behavior. And finally, chemotaxonomy, which uses the actual chemical constituents of the plant to resolve confusions. You even sketched a little molecular structure next to that one.
Those tools are game changers. If we connect this to the bigger picture, using computers to crunch hundreds of traits or analyzing chemical compounds, it prevents us from being fooled by those superficial appearances.
It keeps us honest.
Right. It ensures our classification reflects the true, messy, beautiful reality of biological history.
Speaking of that history, let's flip to page 3. We are diving into the water to meet the original pioneers, algae.
The ones on the sloth bear.
Exactly. You've defined them here as simple, thalloid, autotrophic, and mostly aquatic, living in both fresh and marine water. But I have to stop at that word thalloid. What does that actually mean in plain English?
It's a great term to define early on. Thalloid basically means the plant has a very simple, flat body.
Like a blob.
Kind of. It doesn't have true roots, it doesn't have a true stem, and it doesn't have true leaves. It's just a massive tissue. It is plant life stripped down to its absolute basics.
Basic, maybe, but absolutely vital. Flipping to page 4, there is a benefits of algae box you included that it blew my mind.
The 50% stat.
Yes, 50%. Algae fixes 50% of the Earth's carbon dioxide.
It is a staggering statistic.
They are the primary producers of energy-rich compounds that form the basis of all aquatic food cycles. We always hear about the Amazon rainforest being the lungs of the Earth, but it sounds like algae are doing half the heavy lifting.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Without them, the aquatic food web collapses entirely.
Wow.
And your study guide doesn't just stop at global ecology. You've listed incredibly practical, real-world applications that impact us directly every day.
Oh, right, the food applications.
Yeah, certain marine algae like Porphyra, Laminaria, and Sargassum are used directly as food.
And let's not forget the agar. You point out that agar, which is used to make ice creams and jellies, comes from the algae Gelidium and Gracilaria.
Which is also what scientists use to grow microbes in petri dishes in labs.
Plus, we have space food.
Right.
You noted that protein-rich chlorella and spirulina are literally used as food supplements by astronauts. Oh, and hydrocolloids. These water-holding substances like algin from brown algae and carrageen from red algae,
which have massive commercial uses.
From the fur of a sloth bear to the International Space Station, algae is just everywhere.
But to be everywhere, they have to reproduce. And your notes on page 5 break down their sexual reproduction into 3 very clear categories based on the gametes, the sex cells.
Okay, let's go through those.
First is isogamous, where the 2 fusing gametes are exactly similar in size.
Yeah.
You've used Eulothrix as the example there.
Got it. Same size.
Then there is anisogamous, where the fusing gametes are dissimilar in size.
And finally, oogamous. Your drawing for this one is perfect. You have a large, static female egg that just sits there, and a tiny, motile male sperm that actively swings to it.
Just like human reproduction, essentially.
Exactly. Volvox and fucus are the examples you provided for that one.
Now, once we understand how they reproduce, your guide categorizes the algae into 3 major classes, and you've beautifully color-coded them here.
The green, brown, and red?
Right. Chlorophyceae, the green algae, Chaetophyceae, the brown algae, and Rhodophyceae, the red algae.
Okay, but is it really just a paint job? Why do they need all these different colors?
It's definitely not just for show.
Because I see you've listed that the green guys, Chlorophyceae, have chlorophyll A and B and store food as starch. Very classic plant vibes.
Very classic.
But then the brown algae, Phaeophyceae, have chlorophyll A and C plus a pigment called fucoxanthin. And they have these cool body parts like the holdfast, stipe, and frond.
Right, getting a bit more complex.
And then the red algae, Rhodophyceae, have a dominant pigment called phycoerythrin, and they store Floridian starch. Are these just random chemical differences?
Not at all. And this is where evolution is just so elegant. Think of these different pigments like customized solar panels.
Okay. Solar panels.
Red light from the sun, for instance, has a long wavelength, and it gets absorbed very quickly by water. It doesn't penetrate deep into the ocean at all.
So it stays near the surface.
Exactly. Blue and green light, however, penetrate much deeper. So red algae evolved phycoerythrin. It's a specific solar panel that is exceptionally good at capturing the blue and green light that actually reaches the deeper parts of the ocean.
Oh, wow.
It allows them to survive and photosynthesize at vastly different depths than green algae.
Yeah.
It is a genius survival hack.
That makes so much sense. It's about maximizing whatever light reaches your specific neighborhood in the ocean.
Precisely.
Okay, turning to page 6. Here's where it gets really interesting. We are following your evolutionary timeline, leaving the water and crawling onto the muddy shores with the Bryophytes.
The pioneers of land.
You've written their title in big, bold letters here, the amphibians of Plantae, complete with a little frog doodle. Why call a plant an amphibian?
It is the perfect nickname. Just like frogs, Bryophytes, which include mosses and liverworts, live on land, in the soil. But they absolutely must have water for sexual reproduction.
Why?
Because they rely on that oogamous reproduction we just talked about. Their male gametes, the anthrazoids, have little whip-like tails. They physically need a layer of water, a raindrop, a puddle, A splash to swim to the female sex organ, the archegonium.
Wait, if they are trying to conquer dry land, needing a puddle to reproduce sounds like a massive design flaw. You're just sitting there waiting for a rainstorm to have a family.
It does seem like a flaw at first glance, but remember, evolution is a step-by-step process. They are a bridge.
A bridge between water and land.
Exactly. They've figured out how to survive in the dry air, but they haven't figured out dry reproduction yet, and their bodies are still pretty simple, still kind of phalloid-like.
Still pretty blobby.
Yeah, they lack true roots, stems, or leaves. Instead of roots, they attach to the ground using these delicate thread-like structures called rhizoids.
Oh, I see that on page 7.
They are basically just little anchors.
But despite being so small and simple, your notes highlight their absolute superpower: ecological succession.
Yes, their ecological importance cannot be overstated. Along with lichens, bryophytes are often the very first organisms to colonize bare rock.
Bare rock. How do they survive on rock?
They secrete acids that literally decompose the stone. This helps form the very first layers of soil, making the environment suitable for higher plants to eventually move in.
That is incredible.
Plus, mosses form these incredibly dense, spongy mats on the soil, which absorbs the impact of falling rain and prevents severe soil erosion. They are the terraformers of the plant kingdom.
So without them breaking rocks into dirt, the forests we know couldn't exist.
Exactly. We owe it all to the moss.
You give us a great visual contrast between the two main types of bryophytes here, too. We have the liverworts, which have a prostrate, flat dorsiventral thallus that hugs the ground.
Right.
And then the mosses, which have upright, slender axes with spirally arranged leaves, growing from the spore stage called a protonema. But here is a crucial detail you've circled in red. For all bryophytes, the dominant phase of their life cycle is the gymnosperm.
I'm really glad you brought that up because we need to define gamophyte clearly before we move on.
Okay, lay it on me.
It is exactly what it sounds like. It's the phase of the plant that produces gametes, the sex cells. In bryophytes, that green, leafy, terraforming moss you were looking at on a rock, that is the haploid gamophyte.
So the main plant we see is just a gamete factory.
Yep, the sporophyte phase, which is the part that produces spores, is actually physically attached to and entirely dependent on the gamophyte for its food.
Oh, it's like a parasite on its own lower half.
Exactly. It's just a little stalk that pops up temporarily to release spores. But as we follow your notes to the next page, to the next evolutionary leap, this dynamic is going to flip completely.
And what a leap it is. We are moving to page 8, the Pteridophytes.
Here we go.
We are talking about ferns, horsetails, the plants that literally dominated the era of the dinosaurs. Your notes declare this a massive evolutionary milestone for one big reason. They are the very first terrestrial plants to possess vascular tissue.
Yes.
They invented internal plumbing. They finally have xylem to transport water up from the roots and phloem to transport food down from the leaves.
This changes the entire game. Think of xylem and phloem like a city's water and sewer system.
Okay.
Before this, bryophytes had to stay tiny and flat because they absorbed water cell by cell, like a sponge.
Right, very slow.
But with vascular pipes, pteridophytes can defy gravity. They can afford to have true roots digging deep, true stems reaching high, and true leaves capturing the sun. The plant body is no longer just a simple phallus.
And the power dynamic flips, like you said. The biggest shift you noted here is that the main plant body is now a sporophyte.
Right.
The big, beautiful fern you see when you are hiking in the woods is diploid. Its main job is to produce spores. But there's a quirk here. A major catch that you highlighted on page 9 in a big blue box.
The prothallus.
Yes. What happens when that giant fern drops a spore on the ground?
This is where we see the evolutionary hangover from their aquatic days. When that spore falls, it doesn't just grow into a new baby fern.
It doesn't.
No. It germinates into a tiny, free-living, heart-shaped structure called a prothallus.
Which is the game to fight stage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And here's the catch. It still desperately needs cool, damp, shady places to grow. And it still requires a physical layer of water for the sperm to swim to the egg for fertilization.
So the giant fern can survive in the drier air, reaching up to the sun, but its reproductive cycle is entirely bottlenecked by this fragile, water-dependent little prothallus on the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this biological requirement of the prothallus strictly limits where ferns and other pteridophytes can geographically live on Earth today.
Oh, because they need that wet microclimate.
Right. They can't conquer the dry plains or deserts because they still have one foot stuck in the puddle.
Wow. But that all changes as we flip to page 10 with our next group, the Gymnosperms.
The big ones.
The name literally translates from Greek, gymnos meaning naked, and sperma meaning seeds. These are your pines, your firs, your massive redwoods. They finally completely ditched the dependency on water for reproduction.
This is the breakthrough. This is what allowed plants to conquer the entire globe. Instead of swimming sperm, the male gamophyte is packaged into a pollen grain.
Oh.
And that pollen grain is carried by air currents, the wind, directly to the opening of the ovules in the female cone. No more puddles required.
That is so much more efficient for dry land.
But their defining feature, as the name naked seed suggests, is that the ovules are not enclosed by an ovary wall. They remain exposed on the scales of the cone, both before and after fertilization.
Hence, naked seeds. I also love this little detail you include on page 11 about their taproots. In some genera, like Pinus, the roots have fungal associations called mycorrhiza.
Yes, the mycorrhizal short roots.
It's a symbiotic relationship where the fungus acts like a massive extension of the root system, helping the tree absorb water and minerals, and the tree pays the fungus back with sugars. It's a perfect underground partnership.
It's a great example of biological teamwork.
Yeah.
But evolution didn't stop with the pines.
No, it did not.
Turning to page 12, your study guide leads us to the grand finale of plant evolution, the Angiosperms, the flowering plants.
This is an incredibly diverse group. You've noted they range from the microscopic wolfia to towering eucalyptus trees that grow over 100 meters tall.
Massive range.
The absolute rule here, differentiating them from gymnosperms, is that their seeds are safely enclosed inside fruits, and those ovules develop inside highly specialized structures called flowers.
But the real magic happens inside those flowers.
Yes. Speaking of flowers, there is a massive bright yellow starburst on your page here labeled "Must Know Double Fertilization."
Oh, this is crucial.
I see the diagram with the pollen tube going down into the ovary, but you really emphasize this. Why is this double fertilization process so unique, and how does it work?
It is a remarkably complex and elegant system, and it's unique entirely to angiosperms. When a pollen tube enters the embryo sac inside the ovule, it doesn't just release one male gamete.
It releases two.
It releases two. Here's the choreography. Male gamete number 1 fuses with the egg cell. This is called syngamy, and it forms the diploid zygote, which will eventually grow into the actual baby plant embryo.
Okay, that makes sense. Standard reproduction.
But male gamete number 2 travels further and fuses with a central diploid structure inside the sac.
Wait, what does that do?
This creates a triploid cell called the primary endosperm nucleus, or PAN. This PN develops into the endosperm, which provides vital nutrition to the developing embryo.
So, two distinct fertilization events happen at the exact same time. One creates the baby plant, and the other creates a packed lunch for that baby plant to survive on while it grows.
A packed lunch is the perfect analogy. And because they provide this robust head start for their seeds, angiosperms are the most successful plants on Earth.
That is brilliant. And to help us identify these master planners in the real world, you've provided a super clear cheat sheet here, dividing angiosperms into two main classes, dicots and monocots.
A very handy guide for anyone looking at plants.
Dicots, like beans or roses, have two cotyledons, or seed leaves, in their seed. If you look at their actual leaves, they have a reticulate or net-like vein pattern.
Right.
And their flowers are usually tetramerous or pentamerous, meaning the petals come in multiples of 4 or 5.
On the other side, you have the monocots, like corn, wheat, or grasses. They have only one single cotyledon.
Mono meaning one.
Exactly. Their leaves are typically long and narrow, with straight parallel veins running down them. Think of a blade of grass. And their flowers are usually trimerous, meaning the petals are in multiples of 3.
So next time you are looking at a houseplant or walking through a garden, you can just count the petals or look at the leaf veins, and you'll instantly know which of these two massive categories you're looking at.
It's that simple.
Okay, we are turning to the final pages, pages 13 through 15. So what does this all mean? We finally arrive at the end of your notes, which tackles the most conceptually dense part of the entire plant kingdom.
Oh, the alternation of generations.
Yes, the grand cycle. You've drawn a big circular diagram here showing a continuous loop between a diploid 2-ent sporophyte and a haploid 1-end gatophyte. It looked like an infinity symbol. How do we make sense of this?
This is where plant biology requires us to completely throw out our animal-centric view of the world.
Okay, tossing it out.
In humans and animals, meiosis produces haploid gametes, sperm and egg. Those gametes have only half the DNA, and they cannot divide and grow on their own. They must fuse to create a full diploid zygote immediately.
Right, a single sperm cell doesn't just grow into a half-human.
Exactly. But plants have a wild twist. Plants can undergo cell division mitosis in both the haploid and the diploid states.
Wait, let me make sure I'm getting this. Are you saying a single haploid spore with only half the normal genetic material can land on the ground and just start dividing and dividing to create an entire living, breathing, multicellular organism?
Yes, that is exactly what happens.
Yeah.
That haploid organism is the Ganophyte. It lives its own life, and eventually it produces the actual gametes, which then fuse to form a full diploid zygote.
Wow.
That zygote then divides to build the diploid sporophyte plant body, which eventually releases spores, starting the cycle all over again. They literally alternate between two completely different physical body types, generation after generation.
That is mind-blowing. And your notes brilliantly summarize this entire evolutionary deep dive by showing 3 distinct life cycle patterns based on who dominates this loop.
Right, putting it all together.
First, there's the haplontic life cycle seen in most algae. Here, that multicellular haploid gymnosperm is the dominant free-living phase. The sporophyte is literally just the single-celled zygote. It never even becomes a multicellular plant.
Second, you have the haplodiplontic life cycle found in the Bryophytes and Pteridophytes we discussed.
Middle ground.
Right. Here, both the haploid and diploid phases are multicellular and visible. Remember the moss where the sporophyte grows like a stalk on top of the leafy gamophyte? Or the fern where the big sporophyte comes from the tiny heart-shaped prothallus ganophyte? Both phases have a real physical presence.
And finally, the diplontic life cycle, the strategy of the highly evolved gymnosperms and angiosperms. Here, the diploid sporophyte completely dominates. It is the massive pine tree, the rose bush, the grass on your lawn.
And the gamophyte.
The gamophyte phase has been reduced to almost nothing, just a microscopic pollen grain and a tiny embryo sac completely hidden and dependent on the massive sporophyte.
That is the ultimate aha moment of this entire study guide you've created. If you look at the whole arc, the entire evolutionary journey of the plant kingdom is a story of the Gymnosperm shrinking.
Wow, yeah.
It goes from being the entire plant and algae to a little heart-shaped leaf and ferns down to just a few microscopic cells inside a flower. Meanwhile, the sporophyte takes over, gets vascular plumbing, gets seeds, invents the packed lunch, and completely conquers dry land.
What a journey. From a single-celled green smear fixing carbon in the ocean, all the way to massive eucalyptus trees dominating the continents. You really nailed the evolutionary focus you promised on that very first sticky note.
You know, tracing this incredible progression of how plants conquered the land raises an entirely new, provocative question, something for you to mull over after we wrap up here.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The very first page of your notes had a big red X next to a mushroom, emphatically stating, fungi excluded.
Right, we stayed strictly on plants.
We did. Yet, when we looked at the advanced gymnosperms like the pine trees on page 11, their survival literally depended on mycorrhiza, a fungal partnership.
The underground teamwork.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, nature doesn't actually care about our neat phylogenetic classification boxes. If the most complex plants rely on other kingdoms to survive, how many other independent biological systems are actually just beautifully blurred lines of teamwork?
Oh man, the idea that you can't even tell the story of the ultimate plant conquerors without bringing fungi back into the mix, that completely flips the script on the independent evolutionary journey.
It really does.
Thank you so much for sharing these incredible master study notes with us. They provided such a clear, fascinating roadmap of the plant kingdom, page by page.
It was a pleasure to walk through them.
And thank you for tuning into this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the green blur around you.